In my past life, my husband's mismanagement led to the company's bankruptcy. He, along with his parents, his elder and second uncles, all 7 members of his family, committed suicide by poison right in front of me. I couldn't bear the shock and fainted. When I came to, all 7 members of my husband's family had already been cremated. There was no time to grieve before the loan sharks were at the door again. It was then I realized I had become the sole survivor of this family, 10 years later. With trembling hands, I paid off the final debt, yet, I found the empty house once again filled with the figures of their family of 7. Sui tossed a single coin at my feet, thanking me for clearing their debts all these years. Watching that vile man strut about in triumph, I finally couldn't hold back. I coughed up blood and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my husband went bankrupt. Sui's face, contorted with tears, appeared before me. Every word he spoke dripping with sorrow. Xiaoya, I know I've wronged you. It was my fault for appointing people based on favoritism and mismanaging the company, which led to its bankruptcy and left us with crippling debt. With trembling hands, he produced a small blue glass bottle, crudely marked with a skull and crossbones, as if to make it perfectly clear to anyone what it contained. Xiaoya, I'm so sorry, we've truly run out of options. This is the only way we can atone. He gave me a long, meaningful look, then, with grim determination, he raised the glass bottle and gulped its contents down in large, desperate swallows. Xiaoyu, I hope, you can forgive me. Sui coughed up blood, collapsing to the ground as he writhed in agony, yet his eyes remained fixed on me with an intense, unwavering gaze. The sight of this scene, so vividly familiar from my memory, jolted me into a sudden, stark realization. I had been reborn. I had gone back to the very day. 10 years ago, when the nightmare began, in my past life, my husband was stubborn and nepotistic, running the company into the ground. I pleaded with him countless times, but in the end, it drove us apart and turned us into bitter enemies. In a fit of anger, they cut off all contact with each other. To my shock, a year later, my husband showed up at my door with his entire family in tow, his father, mother, eldest uncle, second uncle, all 7 of them. My husband was weeping bitterly. Consumed by remorse, right in front of me, he drank poison, and with his dying breath, he desperately begged for my forgiveness. Before I could even process what was happening, all 7 members of his family simultaneously took their own lives with poison. The scene was utterly horrific, watching my once beloved husband die in agony before my eyes, with our entire family of 7 perishing together, brought tears streaming down my face. Not only did I forgive my husband for all his faults, but I was also utterly heartbroken and filled with deep remorse. In the end, overwhelmed by grief, I fainted dead away. It was only when I came to that I realized, my sister-in-law Susie had already had all 7 members of her family cremated in the blink of an eye. Before I could even begin to process this immense grief, I was horrified to find that the loan shark's enforcers were already at the door. They were menacingly blocking the entrance. It was only then, to my utter shock, that I learned Sui had racked up debts amounting to a staggering 100 million. And I was the only surviving debtor left in the entire family. No matter how much I resisted, the law left me no choice but to shoulder the entire burden, or I'd be rotting in prison for the rest of my life. Left with no other option, I had to sell off both my villa and my company to repay the debts. I even had to sell my parents' company and our family home. After that, I worked day and night, holding down 3 jobs at once and living frugally. It took me a full 10 years to pay off the very last penny. Just as I handed over the final payment with trembling hands, thinking it was all finally over, I was suddenly struck by the sight of a happy, loving family now living in the very villa I had been forced to sell. My husband has changed his name and started a new life, embracing his new lover with a pair of adorable children by his side. My in-laws were beaming with radiant smiles, looking even younger than I do. It was clear they were living a life of comfort and ease. My heart was instantly torn apart, bleeding as if slashed by a knife. I remembered my parents, who passed away 3 years ago from sheer exhaustion after working themselves to the bone to help me pay off my debts. I thought of myself, worn out and haggard, hair already turning gray at a young age after a decade of toiling day and night. Sui drove off in his luxury car, his stunningly beautiful young wife nestled in his arms. Before leaving, he rolled down the window and looked at me as if I were a fool. He tossed a single yuan coin dismissively, and it fluttered down to land at my feet. Here's $1 for all your hard work paying off our family's debts. Ha ha ha. Seeing the smug, ugly faces of that wretched family, I felt as if 1,000 arrows had pierced my heart. With a pft, I coughed up a great gush of blood and sank into eternal darkness. Smack. A heavy slap landed squarely on my face. Before I could steady myself, a shrill torrent of abuse pierced my ears. "You vile creature. A day as husband and wife brings 100 days of grace. How could you just stand by and watch my brother die?" My sister-in-law had slapped me. My eyes snapped open. The first thing I saw was my sister-in-law's venomous face. You wicked creature." My sister-in-law's voice was piercingly shrill. I looked up to see my elder sister-in-law and my younger sister-in-law charging towards me like a pair of enraged she-wolves. My sister-in-law Susie, heavily pregnant, glared at me with venomous, fiery eyes. One finger pointed accusingly. "It's all because of you, you heartless woman. You refused to help us pay our debts. You're determined to drive our whole family to ruin. You're nothing but a monster." My other sister-in-law, Sophie, dressed in a garish, provocative style, also stared at me with a face full of rage. Her finger, tipped with bright red nail polish, was practically jabbing the tip of my nose. "You're so heartless. So what if my brother argued with you? A day as husband and wife brings 100 nights of affection. Are you really going to stand by and watch them be wiped out?" The barrage of accusations hit me like a sudden storm, giving me no time to react. I narrowed my eyes slightly, standing there in silence, letting their insults wash over me. I must have looked utterly stunned, but inside, a cold sneer was forming. It was the same in my past life. Everything happened so suddenly. I was utterly terrified and paralyzed by the sight of corpses strewn everywhere, completely at a loss for what to do, just as I rushed over. Desperate to lift my husband, my two wonderful sisters-in-law suddenly popped out of nowhere. Those two had always had it in for me, constantly stirring up trouble and nitpicking over every little thing. They deserve a great deal of credit for driving the wedge between my husband and me that led to our estrangement. Now, without even asking for the full story, they're pinning all the blame on me. It was clearly Suyi's own fault. He ignored all advice and mismanaged the business into bankruptcy. Anyone who doesn't know the truth would think I drove them to their deaths. Besides, Suyi and I have been separated for over a year, and according to our prior agreement, it won't be long now before our marriage can be dissolved outright. It took a second chance at life for me to finally understand. Suyi had it all planned. He deliberately timed it, staging the entire family's fake deaths right before our marriage was to be dissolved. All of it was to make me the sole debtor, plain and simple. The whole family was in on the scheme. First, all 7 of them suddenly made a show of lamenting their fate and committing suicide. Just as I was reeling from the shock, they sent in my 2 sisters-in-law to take turns bombarding me, leaving me utterly speechless and unable to defend myself. Looking back, it's clear their tactics were perfectly coordinated, leaving me no room to breathe, all to ensure I had no time to think. Their torrent of insults and false accusations continued, with Susie and Sophie flanking me, completely blocking my line of sight. "Shinyu, if it weren't for how much my brother loves you, I'd have called the police and had you arrested today. Shinyu, give me back my brother, give me back my parents. I hope you die a horrible death." Just then, my parents arrived and saw the ground littered with corpses and awash with blood. My mother, who was timid to begin with, immediately collapsed onto the ground. Father was also swaying unsteadily, his face ashen. My heart ached unbearably. I could only imagine how terrified my own parents must have been at that moment. The Su family's scheme was truly vicious. Any decent person witnessing the scene of a family of 7 meeting their end right there would be utterly horrified. In my past life, their entire family was thrown into complete disarray, allowing the Su family to manipulate them with ease, unaware that I was walking step by step into their trap. At this thought, a subtle curve lifted the corner of my mouth. It seems even heaven could not bear to watch Suyi's heinous acts, and thus granted me this chance to be reborn. In that case, I absolutely must not squander this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I will thoroughly cleanse every ounce of the humiliation I have suffered. My gaze passed through Sushi's hair, catching sight of Suyi lying twisted on the ground in a ludicrous, contorted posture. The red pigment spewed from his mouth was smeared across the floor, a sight that was utterly horrifying. In my past life, it was this garish red that seared my eyes, so I never truly opened them to look carefully. They had clearly died from poisoning, yet each one had ruddy complexions and vivid lips, as if they were merely asleep. It wasn't until later, when I found myself working as a nursing assistant in a hospital, that I learned the truth. A person who has been poisoned doesn't just turn pale with bluish lips, they also foam at the mouth, and their eyes bulge out. It was a truly horrifying sight, but back then, I was just a sheltered, well-behaved girl who had led a charmed life under my parents' protection, completely unaware of such things. He gets flustered at the slightest thing, let alone a matter involving 7 lives. Suyi, how could you be so heartless? Why did you abandon me like this? I had intended to force out a few tears just for show. But the moment I recalled all those bitter days of the past, an overwhelming sense of injustice welled up inside me, and the tears began to stream down my face. With a sudden, anguished wail, I shoved Sophie aside and threw myself onto Suyi's lifeless body on the floor. I had only one purpose in doing this. I wanted to find out whether Suyi was merely pretending to be asleep, or if he had truly used something to render himself unconscious. The two daughters of the Su family were completely taken aback by my sudden, frenzied outburst. I knocked Sophie aside, and in her panic, she flailed her arms, accidentally grabbing her pregnant sister. The two of them were terrified, breaking out in a cold sweat. They barely managed to cling to each other and steady themselves. By the time we realized what was happening, we saw that I was already on my knees, my hands clamped around Suyi's throat, shaking him violently. Xinyu, have you lost your mind? My brother is already dead, and you still have to desecrate him like this. Suzy was terrified. She was about to rush over and intervene when a sharp pain shot through her abdomen, forcing her to clutch her stomach and freeze in place. Cursing furiously, I ignored her completely, choking Suyi violently with one hand while slamming his head against the floor with the other. Thud, thud, thud. The relentless thudding was enough to make your skin crawl. Just hearing it told you how much it must have hurt. Suyi, you bastard, wake up. Don't you dare scare me like this. Wake up, now. I kept cursing under my breath, but to anyone else, it just sounded like the ravings of someone driven mad by pain. Finally snapping out of it, Sophie rushed over and yanked me to my feet. I offered no resistance, a faint smile playing at the corners of my downturned mouth. I've figured it all out now. To heighten the effect, Suyi really did ingest some kind of coma-inducing drug and has fallen into a state of deep shock. The others are likely in the same state. I can't believe they were willing to go to such lengths, spending so much just to set me up. Xinyu, you bastard. Are you trying to kill me? No. Are you trying to desecrate my brother's body? In a fit of rage, Sophie almost let the cat out of the bag. She quickly covered her slip-up and, fuming, slapped me across the face, with a sharp asterisk smack. Asterisk. Half my face flushed red, marked by 5 distinct fingerprints, but I wasn't angry. Instead, I looked at Sophie and flashed her a sinister smile. It made Sophie gasp, her heart nearly stopping in her chest. I was laughing and crying hysterically, my demeanor utterly frantic. It was painfully obvious I was in a state of severe shock, my mind teetering on the edge of sanity. At that very moment, the urgent wail of a siren pierced the air outside, and an ambulance screeched to a halt in a frantic rush. Before it had even come to a complete stop, a young male doctor in a white coat leapt out and dashed straight into the main hall. Without waiting for instructions, he threw himself down beside the person lying on the floor and began a swift, practiced examination. Dilated pupils, no heartbeat, no pulse. The symptoms are consistent with death by poisoning. The male doctor's face was grave, a stream of clinical terminology spilled from his lips as he delivered the news of Suyi's death with cold, definitive clarity. Upon seeing him arrive, a flicker of suppressed delight broke through the sultry composure on Sufei's face. It was only much later, and quite by chance, that I learned the emergency doctor's name was Wu Shuda, and that he was, in fact, Sufei's boyfriend. The two families had already cut off contact by then, so they were unaware of the matter. Wu Shuda's identity was likely part of the Su family's plan all along, the crucial piece in their scheme to fake their deaths and escape. I sneered inwardly, then deliberately said to Wu Shuda with feigned urgency, "Doctor, I think my husband is still alive. Please, you have to try to save him." Wu Shuda looked at me with a stern expression. "Madam, please accept my condolences. This is a professional examination. There is absolutely no mistake." As he spoke, he even reached out and nudged me aside. "Please step aside and do not interfere with my work. There may still be living patients among the others." As I listened to his righteous and solemn words, nothing but a cold sneer remained in my heart. It was this very same high-minded emergency doctor who helped Suyi's family of 7 forge the false death certificates, and it was this that led me to step completely into this vicious trap. I obediently stepped aside, watching as he finished examining each one, and then with all due solemnity, announced the deaths of all 7 members of the Su family. I discreetly turned on my phone's voice recorder and walked back towards Dr. Wu. "Doctor, take a closer look. I think they're just unconscious, not dead. Please, check again, I'm begging you." With tears streaking my face, I grabbed Dr. Wu Shuda's arm and shook it desperately. A flicker of guilt crossed Wu Shuda's face, but fortunately, Sophie rushed over just in time to rescue him. "What do you mean, me? You killed my entire family, and you still have the nerve to deny it." She was in the habit of throwing mud at me, trying to trap me with that kind of talk. "No, little sister, I really think your brother and the others are still alive. Look, Your brother's arm is still warm, and I think I just saw Mom's eyelid twitch. I spoke with such urgent desperation that I startled both Sophie and Susie, who quickly moved to hold me back. Sis, you're mistaken, you must be so overcome with grief that you're seeing things. Besides, he's a certified paramedic, how could he possibly mistake someone for dead if they weren't? In her panic, Sophie even played the emotional card, reluctantly addressing me as sis. As she spoke, Sophie urgently shot Wushuda a look, signaling him to issue the death certificate quickly to avoid any complications. Beads of cold sweat formed on Wushuda's forehead as he hastily pulled out the prepared death certificate and began scribbling on it with his pen. Death certificates were issued by him, one after another, with such appalling ease. A cold sneer curled at the corner of my mouth. In that brief moment, I had already devised my plan for revenge. So, Sui wants to play dead, then I'll make sure he ends up that way for real. The very death certificate the Su family used to ruin me would become the instrument of my vengeance. With this in hand, I could, as his wife, legitimately send them to the crematorium and have them reduced to ashes. By then, Wushuda had already prepared the death certificates and handed them directly to me. These are their death certificates. Take a good look. In my past life, that thick stack of death certificates was the final straw that shattered my fragile nerves. The pain became too much to bear, and I blacked out. Now, looking at this stack of death certificates, my heart is soaring with joy. This is the scepter on my path to vengeance, the sharpest sword in my hand. No, this can't be real. You're lying to me, aren't you, doctor? Please, check again. Could there have been a mistake? To really sell it and make sure Wushuda was well and truly cornered, I grabbed his arm with my other hand and started wailing. Beads of cold sweat broke out on Wushuda's forehead as he hurriedly tried to pry my arm off. He couldn't even look me in the eye, shouting defensively, "What nonsense are you spouting? How could I possibly have made a mistake? That's absolutely impossible." Sophie and Susie hurried over to hold me back. Sis, you're too distraught. Please don't make things difficult for the doctor. That was exactly what I wanted to hear from Wushuda. So I obediently let go of my arm. With so many people dying at once, I'm afraid it'll be hard to explain later. Shouldn't we call the police first? The sheer terror on my face nearly scared Su Qian and Sophie out of their wits. No way. The words nearly escaped their lips at the same time. If the police came, wouldn't the fact that all 7 family members were faking their deaths be exposed? Why, they died in my house. What if you all turn around and accuse me of murder? What am I supposed to do then? I asked, feigning confusion. How could that happen, sister-in-law? We all know they took their own lives. With only the 2 of us left in the Su family, who would go out of their way to frame you? Sophie racked her brains trying to explain, while Susie was far more direct, pointing at me and launching into a tirade. Shinyu, what's the meaning of this? They've suffered enough in death. Do you really want the police to cut them open? You're utterly heartless. Bombarded with that barrage of high-minded arguments, I immediately fell silent. Well, if that's how it is, we won't wait any longer. As I spoke, I took out my phone and dialed a number. Hello, crematorium, we have a major mass poisoning incident here. 7 people. We need you to send a vehicle immediately. Yes, the death certificates have already been issued. All family members are present and have no objections. The address is 128 Jianglin Road. Don't ask me how I know the crematorium's phone number. Back when I was down on my luck and taking odd jobs, I even worked as a body carrier at a crematorium. The pay there was exceptionally high, which is precisely why no one else was willing to do it. At first, both Susie and Sophie were completely bewildered, having no idea what I was up to. Hearing this, it finally dawned on them. That wretched woman intended to burn their entire family alive. No, tell them not to come now. Sophie screamed at me, her face contorted with anger. I simply ignored her and slammed the phone down with a sharp click. She turned to look at me, her face a mask of confusion, and asked, "Little sister, why? Our family died so tragically, I just can't bear to look anymore. Do you really want to just leave them lying on the floor like this?" "No, that's not what I meant." Sophie was suddenly at a loss for words, unsure how to continue. She quickly shot Susie a pleading look for help. Susie subtly pointed at the water glass. Sophie immediately understood and quickly pretended to be concerned, saying, "Sis, you're grieving too much. You need to take care of yourself. Let me get you a glass of water." As I said this and ran to fetch a cup, Su Qian hurriedly stepped into my line of sight. "Shinyu, don't panic about this just yet. We're here for you. As daughters of the Su family, how could we possibly stand by and do nothing?" Just then, Su Fei approached with a glass of water and said in a gentle tone, "Sister-in-law, please have some hot water to soothe your throat. You're the only family we have left now. You absolutely mustn't come to any harm. If I didn't know the truth of the matter, I would have been moved to tears of gratitude. I had thought my sister-in-law had finally started to see me as family. I was certain there was something wrong with this glass of water. It must have been their backup plan, prepared long in advance. In my past life, I was too weak and fainted too early. So I never got to see them resort to this method. My hands trembled as I took the glass of water, and I thanked her in a low voice. Thank you, little sister. Then, slowly, I brought the glass to my lips. In the reflection from the side of the glass, I clearly saw the expectant look in the Sioux sisters' eyes and the eerie smiles on their lips. A cold sneer formed in my heart. At that very moment, my hand trembled, and the cup slipped, shattering with a sharp crack as it hit the floor. What do you mean by that? Sophie flew into a rage, her eyes and brows shooting up as if she wanted nothing more than to knock me out with a single punch. This woman was a real cockroach, impossible to crush. I'm so sorry, it was an accident. My hands are shaking terribly. I offered a stream of weak apologies. Susie quickly grabbed her sister's arm, afraid of arousing my suspicion. Just then, the sound of a vehicle came from outside, and a team of workers entered. Hello. We're from the crematorium. Are these the bodies on the floor that need attending to? I lifted a face etched with sorrow and gave a weak, slight nod. Yes, these are their death certificates, issued by this emergency doctor. Logically, Wu Daming should have left immediately after signing the death certificates, but to cooperate with Sophie, he stubbornly remained on the spot. No, they can't be taken away yet. Susie was frantic with urgency. The crematorium staff was taken aback. Do we need to involve the police? After all, it was 7 lives lost, all under unnatural circumstances. They couldn't afford to be careless. That's not necessary, Susie said quickly, afraid they would make a fuss and call the authorities. They did indeed take their own lives by poison after their company went bankrupt. I'm their daughter, so there's no issue here. The person in charge furrowed his brow. If there's truly no issue, and you insist on leaving it here in the peak of summer, then I'll have no choice but to call in the public health department. No. The 2 Sioux sisters waved their hands frantically, one problem after another. Their carefully laid plans were now full of holes. I'm the deceased's wife and daughter-in-law. You'd better take it away now. At worst, we can keep it at the crematorium until after the memorial service. Seeing the Sioux sisters on the verge of fainting from anxiety, my words undoubtedly offered a glimmer of hope. The 2 exchanged a glance, thinking this arrangement was acceptable for now, as long as it wasn't burned immediately. Yes, we agree to have it taken away now as well. Hearing this, a subtle curve touched the corner of my lips. Once you're at the crematorium, I know the procedures there best. You won't have any say in the matter. After obtaining consent from all the family members, the crematorium staff stopped the talk and immediately began moving the body. By the way, please send one immediate family member to accompany the vehicle. We still have some paperwork to complete. After the body was loaded into the vehicle, the person in charge came over and inquired. Upon hearing this, Susie quickly insisted that she would go, and I didn't argue with her. Instead, she took my hand and gave me a long list of instructions. Big sister, I'm entrusting Mom, Dad, and Sui to you. I'll also need your help with arranging the funeral. As she spoke, her eyes welled up with tears again, and she began to cry, covering her face. Just as the car was about to start, Susie quickly pulled her arm free from mine and hurried towards the vehicle. I discreetly stuck out my foot. Ouch! In her haste, Susie lost her footing and tumbled to the ground. She immediately clutched her stomach and let out a loud groan. Sis, what's wrong? Sophie was terrified. She rushed over to help me up, but Susie was in too much pain to straighten her back. Oh no! Could it be the baby? We need to get her to the hospital. Quick, isn't there an ambulance right here? I cried out, feigning concern. Yes, Wushuda, come quick and help get my eldest sister into the car. In the heat of the moment, Sophie forgot to hide the nature of my relationship with the doctor. Susie was frantic. She grabbed Sophie's hand and shot me a series of urgent, meaningful looks. Sophie, you'll have to go to the crematorium in my place. Alright, don't worry. I'll handle Mom and Dad. That woman won't be able to cause any trouble. Sophie wore a vicious expression, thinking I was just a useless, naive pushover she could easily manipulate. Watching the ambulance speed away, a smile curled at the corner of my lips. Of the Sioux sisters, only Su Qian had any real brains. Sophie was nothing but a paper tiger, all bark and no bite, easy to deal with. With the crematorium staff urging her on, Sophie scrambled onto a hearse in a fluster. I, on the other hand, boarded the last vehicle at a leisurely pace. That vehicle was carrying my husband, Su Yi. Gazing at his face in eternal rest, I couldn't help but reflect on what a handsome man he was. I'm a complete sucker for good looks. Back then, I had absolutely zero resistance to his deliberate flattery and pursuit. Looking back now, the Su family had their eyes on the Shin family's fortune from the very beginning. I looked at the person in charge sitting in front of me. Hello. I'd like to arrange for their cremation as soon as possible. What's the procedure for that? I continued, explaining to the other party. With such a major incident, I'm concerned it might attract the press. I'm sure your crematorium wouldn't want that kind of disturbance either. Right, the memorial service can always be held after the cremation. The person in charge nodded in understanding. Normally, we would schedule you for tomorrow, however, given the special circumstances, we can arrange it immediately if we follow the expedited procedure. I nodded in immediate understanding. They all died from poisoning. I don't want to see them in such a wretched state either. Let's go through the special procedure. Cost is no object. The person in charge's eyes lit up. This was a major deal. He immediately called the manager, and sure enough, it was confirmed very quickly. Mrs. Shen, here's what we can do. We'll put a rush on it for you. We can start the cremation in just 1 hour. The fee will be 15,000 per person. Does that work for you? 1 hour? Absolutely not. The longer this drags on, the more things can go wrong. I made a snap decision. As I spoke, I casually handed the man a stack of cash. Alright, here's the deal. If you can start the cremation immediately, I'll add an extra 10,000 to each person's fee. As you know, my sister-in-law is in trouble, and I need to hurry back to take care of her. Hearing the price had doubled and knowing he could pocket a cut for himself, the supervisor gritted his teeth. Mrs. Shen, please wait a moment. Let me speak with the manager again. I nodded. I wasn't worried in the slightest. They would definitely agree. Sure enough, it wasn't long before they got back to us with an answer, agreeing to fire up the furnace for them right away. I was inwardly overjoyed. Pointing at my husband with a face full of sorrow, I said, my husband always took such pride in his appearance. Seeing him like this now, I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted it. Could he be the first to go? The person in charge gave me a sympathetic look. It seemed their marital bond must have been strong. The whole family dying like that is truly tragic. Besides, a trivial matter like this means nothing to him. No problem. The hearse made its way to the suburban crematorium. As I looked at the familiar house before me, a flood of emotions washed over me. In this lifetime, I will personally send Shani to hell. From now on, I'll live my own life happily and freely. I'll never stoop to hauling corpses in a place like this again. Knowing my way around the crematorium, I headed straight for the incinerators. Meanwhile, Sophie was still naively following the others to handle the paperwork. Watching Suyi's corpse being slowly wheeled in filled me with immense satisfaction. Suyi, you wanted to play dead. Well, I'll make sure you get your wish. I pretended to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, only to notice his eyelids flutter ever so slightly. It seems the sedative is wearing off. Good thing I timed this right, or he'd have been up in no time. I knew his consciousness was in that hazy, half-awake state now. He could hear me, so I leaned in close and whispered deliberately into his ear. Suyi, I know you're faking it, but it's fine. I'll personally send you off. You can rest assured. Sure enough, I succeeded in seeing his finger twitch slightly. I imagine that right now, his heart must be pierced by 1,000 arrows, just like mine was back then. Watching him being slowly pushed into the crematorium, a sense of relief, as if from another lifetime, washed over me. Just as the staff member was about to press the button, a frantic shout rang out from outside the door. No, wait, don't cremate him yet. It was Sophie's voice. Immediately after, the door was slammed open with tremendous force, and everyone turned their heads in shock. Seizing the only chance I had, I acted with lightning speed and pressed the button. Having come this far, did they really think I'd give Sui a chance to come back from the dead? Stop. Don't cremate him yet, Sophie screamed, her voice ragged and desperate, her hair disheveled and her face slick with sweat. All the staff stared at me in shock. No one noticed Sui inside the incinerator, limbs flailing in a desperate struggle, only to be instantly engulfed by the flames. The sight was utterly satisfying. It seemed the sedative had completely worn off. The thought of him being burned alive, fully conscious, was deeply gratifying. No, brother, Sophie, who was facing the crematorium, also witnessed this scene and let out a piercing, agonized cry. She struggled to rush towards the crematorium but was restrained by the staff. Miss Sue, please accept our condolences. We understand your pain, but you cannot disrupt our work, the staff member said sternly. No, my brother isn't dead yet. Stop what you're doing. The staff member turned around but saw nothing and said with displeasure, Miss Sue, please don't talk nonsense. We would never cremate a living person. Just then, stumbling footsteps sounded at the door. Wait, my son isn't dead yet. A disheveled old woman stumbled in, likely still groggy from medication. barely able to walk straight, a corpse seemingly coming back to life in broad daylight terrified even the crematorium staff, sending them into a chorus of screams. Staring into the roaring flames of the incinerator, the old woman collapsed to the floor. Then, I turned a face full of hatred toward myself. "You vicious woman, you burned my son alive, Mom." The doctors had already signed the death certificate. "The fact that you came back to life can only be called a miracle," I explained through tears. To my great regret, I had to admit the old woman was in surprisingly good shape. Any later and she would have been in the crematorium. But maybe it's for the best, forcing me to watch my own son die with my own eyes. To spend the rest of my life saddled with so much debt is a fate worse than death. My son, what a terrible way to die, you vicious woman. This was clearly murder. The old woman, already weakened by the drug, couldn't withstand the shock upon waking and immediately fainted. Sophie was also terrified. She quickly gathered her mother in her arms, and the scene instantly descended into chaos. Because of this unforeseen complication, the remaining people could no longer proceed with the cremation, but for me, none of that mattered anymore. I immediately called my father. "Dad, listen to me. Suyi's family faked their deaths. They owe 100 million in loan shark debts and want to pin it on me. In my past life, it took me 10 years to figure all this out, but I won't let it happen again. Several tens of millions of that was just borrowed. They plan to squander it themselves. Get someone to trace it right now and have the money transferred back." My father was already a fairly well-known local entrepreneur. If I hadn't fallen for that social climbing gold digger who swindled a fortune out of us, we wouldn't have ended up unable to repay even the 100 million in loan shark debt. Hearing my words, he snapped to attention immediately. Don't you worry, I'll take care of this right away." After entrusting the matter to my father, I waited for the police to arrive with a sense of relief. I intended to use this time to keep all the Su family members occupied, preventing them from having any opportunity to transfer the funds, with a life at stake. The police arrived at the scene quickly. Under their investigation, the Su family's collective act of feigning poisoning could no longer be concealed. The evidence proved that Sui had indeed been burned to death. However, the crematorium bore no responsibility, as everything had been carried out according to procedure. The situation was chaotic, and no one could tell for sure who pressed the button. The truth about Wushuda conspiring with the Su family to forge a false certificate could no longer be concealed, and the recording in my possession completely absolved me of any responsibility. "You bastard, why did you forge that death certificate? Why did you have to kill my husband? He was still so young," I shouted, beating my fists against Wushuda as I lunged at him. "It wasn't me. Sophie made me do it. I had no choice." Wushuda knew his medical career was over and he was facing prison time. He glared at Sophie with pure venom, determined to drag her down with him. "You bastard, this was all your terrible idea. If it weren't for you, my family would never have come up with this scheme. You're the reason my brother is dead." Sophie, never one to think before she spoke, immediately started screaming and cursing, spilling everything. I stood by, weeping pitifully with tears streaming down my face, and cried, "It's all your fault. You killed my husband. I know how to play that game too." False accusations and manipulative sweet talk. From start to finish, I was just a poor, clueless victim, completely manipulated and played for a fool by that whole family. As for the matter of me slipping extra money under the table to jump the queue, the crematorium staff, eager to avoid any blame, didn't dare breathe a word of it. All members of the Su family were rescued, except for Sui. However, upon leaving the hospital, they would face an even more humiliating predicament. They were saddled with a staggering 100 million in usurious debt, along with charges of conspiring to fake a death to evade responsibility, falsifying company accounts, and other crimes. Su Qian, who was already suffering from a threatened miscarriage, then had to hear about all this family turmoil. In her distress and panic, she suffered a stillbirth. Not only was Wushuda stripped of his medical license, but he was also prosecuted for issuing false certificates and for attempted murder. Sophie was also sent to prison for her role in the conspiracy. When the dust settled and accountability was assigned, including myself, there were still 7 debtors left in the company. I was the only one who had no involvement in the business operations. Yet the court, at its discretion, assigned me 10 million in debt. Meanwhile, Mr. Shin's father was the first to track down and recover 50 million from Suyi's secret account. The most absurd part is that this secret account was actually opened in my name. I didn't even have to change it. On the day Suyi was laid to rest, a light drizzle fell, with some of the Su family arrested and others ill. Not a single soul came to see him off. Holding a black umbrella, I stood quietly before his tombstone, my gaze calm and distant. "Sui, rest assured, I'll spend the remaining 40 million wisely on your behalf. A smile of profound satisfaction slowly dawned in my eyes. I'll find someone I love, have 2 adorable children, I'll enjoy a happy family life with my parents and see all the beautiful sights this world has to offer. Gazing at the black and white photo on the tombstone, I whispered under my breath, "So, you brought all of this upon yourself, you sowed the wind, now you reap the whirlwind." With a cold sneer, I let go, allowing the black umbrella in my hand to be swept away by the wind, as if it carried off all the suffering of a past life. Those unspeakable years could no longer haunt my dreams. I looked up, the rain had cleared, a brilliant beam of sunlight fell upon my exquisite profile, a radiant smile spread across my face as I turned and hurried toward my parents in the distance. A brand new life awaited me there. Story 2. A little girl was blown onto my balcony by a Category 5 typhoon. She clung to the railing for dear life, screaming for help. I, however, put on my headphones and turned a deaf ear. Later, the girl fell and was left permanently disabled. Her parents pointed their fingers in my face and called me a murderer. The entire internet branded me as heartless and cruel. So what? It's still better than my past life, where saving someone led to extortion and my family's ruin. 1. The typhoon held. Roaring like a monstrous beast, I opened the piping hot self-heating pot, ready to eat. The neighborhood group chat suddenly buzzed to life. Resident of Unit 303, Building 2, there's someone on your balcony, go check, now. Oh my god, I live across the way and I can see it clearly. There's a kid hanging off your balcony, about to fall. I see it too. This is terrifying. Someone help, quick. They were frantically tagging me. The property manager's call came through to my phone in no time. I just let it ring, refusing to pick up. I took a bite of the spicy rice noodles. So refreshing. Messages in the group chat were still flying by. I saw it clearly. The child was blown over from next door to apartment 303. Her parents must be frantic with worry. As soon as this message appeared, the flood of texts in the group chat immediately slowed down. The atmosphere grew tense. After a moment, the property management finally spoke up, still tagging me. MS, when a life is at stake. Let's put our personal grievances aside for now and focus on saving the child. Others began to chime in one after another. Even though the couple in 302 can be awful, the child is innocent. MS, when you have a kind heart and a beautiful soul, you'll help, won't you? The cries for help from the balcony grew louder. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and went back to my meal. In my past life, I never needed a group chat alert. At the first sound of a cry for help, I'd rush over to check. It took a tremendous effort to pull the child inside, fighting against the force of the gale. As a result, I suffered a bone bruise in my arm, scraped my knee, and got cuts on my face from debris carried by the wind. More than half of the stockpiled goods inside the house were swept away, and the TV was smashed with a hole when a suddenly airborne robot vacuum crashed right into it. The losses exceeded 20,000 yuan. I didn't make a fuss about any of it, after all. Saving a life is a greater virtue than building a 7-story pagoda. I let the child stay at my place for 2 days, until the typhoon passed. I thought her parents would come pick her up right away. To my surprise, they didn't even show up. They just tagged me in the group chat, saying, since you live alone anyway, and it's too crowded over here, why don't you just keep the kid at your place for a while longer? I refused right there in the group chat. Then took the child over and knocked on their door. They didn't even open the door, just threw these words at me. 2 days is a stay, a month is also a stay. If you could look after her for 2 days, why can't you do it for a month? If it weren't for my daughter keeping you company, you probably would have been scared to death by the typhoon those 2 days. Furious, I left the child outside, shut the door, and washed my hands of the whole situation. The couple was utterly heartless and didn't let the child in for the entire day. With no other choice, I ended up letting the child stay with me. I contacted the property management to mediate while also feeding the child. The standoff lasted for over half a month before they finally came to take the child back. To my shock, just half a day after they picked him up, they claimed I had made the child sick with bad food, accused me of beating and abusing him, and threatened to sue me. I rushed to the hospital to confront them, only to find the child lying in the hospital bed, covered in bruises. That tiny, innocent hand pointed straight at me without hesitation and said, "She's the one who hit me and gave me spoiled food on purpose." In an instant, I became the villain that everyone wanted to see punished. I was laid off by the company and abandoned by my friends. Even my parents back in my hometown were ostracized by the neighbors. I was ordered to pay them compensation for medical expenses and emotional distress, totaling a staggering 350,000 yuan. For someone like me, who graduated less than 6 months ago, this is an astronomical sum. My parents used their life savings to pay off my debts, only to succumb to their old illnesses and pass away in despair. All while enduring the scorn and curses of our fellow villagers. I was then evicted by my landlord, left homeless on the streets. In a daze, I missed a step and fell to my death from the staircase of a pedestrian overpass. After death, my spirit lingered by the little girl's side for 2 days. I witnessed with my own eyes how their family used our hard-earned money to buy a grand new house. The little girl stomped on my photo and said proudly, "It's all thanks to my brilliant acting that you managed to swindle money from this fool. He he he." That cunning look was the spitting image of her parents. Since fate has given me a second chance at this moment, why on earth would I play the fool and get bitten by the same snake twice? Wouldn't it be way better to just grab a bite and binge watch a show? 2 minutes had passed since the little girl cried for help. Just like in the previous life, her parents remained silent. They probably wanted to create the illusion that they were also in trouble, to make everyone put the pressure on me. As another minute ticked by, they finally couldn't hold back any longer. "Young lady, I know you must have seen the group message. He's our only child. Please, I'm begging you, help us. Don't you play dead. I can smell cooking coming from your place. You must know something. Let me tell you, this is a matter of life and death. A human life is more important than anything. Don't you understand?" Those last 2 sentences were spoken by the man of the house, Wang Dafeng. Just reading the words, I could practically see his snarling, sneering face. I still remember the first day I moved in. He came over with his child, knocked on my door, and straight up asked me for a red envelope. "Who moves into a new home without throwing a feast? That's your business if you don't. But you absolutely must give my child a red envelope." The girl named Hong Hong looked sweet and innocent, but she barged right into my house and took the only 200 yuan in cash straight from my wallet. Instead of saying thank you, she stuck her tongue out at me and said, "Huh, only 200, what a cheapskate." From that day on, I had a bad impression of that family. I later learned from the neighbors that the whole family was notorious around here for being shameless troublemakers that everyone despised. I don't go looking for trouble, but they often come to me and start it. They come up with all sorts of ridiculous excuses to get money from me. Her kid's favorite pastime is to randomly press all the elevator buttons when I'm trying to get to work, making me late to reach the ground floor. If you want to get out of the elevator, you have to give her a tip. They forced me to take the stairs, so I had to call the property management over to mediate all the time. Everyone in the neighborhood knows I don't get along with that family. Right before the typhoon hit, I was taping a cross pattern on my balcony glass, and they filmed a short video to mock me. I tried to warn them to take some precautions, but they just called me an idiot. "You're the fool, not me. We've got tall buildings blocking the wind from every direction. What's a typhoon going to do to us?" Not only did they ignore the warnings, they actually built a swing on their balcony and boasted about live streaming themselves on it during the storm. The little girl was blown over, probably from trying to perform her swinging in the wind stunt. By now, the child's cries were filled with terror. Neighbors came forward one after another, urging me to rescue the child immediately. I moved all the food and valuables into the bedroom, then tagged everyone in the message. "My front door is unlocked. Anyone who wants to help can come in. I'm locked in the bedroom and can't get out." Wang Dafeng sent a voice message, "Cut the crap. I'm giving you a chance to earn some good karma by saving someone. You should be grateful and jump at the opportunity to do a good deed for our family." The neighbor from 301 chimed in, "That's right, dear. Saving a life is a virtuous act. Such a great opportunity has fallen into your lap. Don't turn it down." I replied to her, "You're absolutely right. Such a rare and wonderful opportunity. I'm still young. I'll have plenty of chances in the future. You, on the other hand, well, how many days do you have left? Tell you what, I'll pass this good deed on to you. You'd better hurry over and save them yourself, before it's too late." Unit 301 complained, "You want me to go out in this gale? That's practically asking me to risk my life. Don't you know that when you open the window, the wind rushes in and can suck a person right out?" I laughed. "Exactly. With a typhoon this strong, everyone's telling me to go out. Do you think my life is worthless if you don't value it?" "I certainly do." At that, the people who had been urging me fell silent. The property management had no choice but to tag Wang Dafeng. "Mr. Wang, as you can see, Ms. Wen has already unlocked the door. Since you're the child's parents, it's more appropriate for you to go and rescue them." The couple fell silent for a few seconds. A moment later, the lady of the house, Lin Choyue, posted a selfie video in the group chat. Her face was streaked with tears. "My poor daughter, it's all my fault. I'm so useless. I just sprained my ankle as I was about to leave, and your father got a leg cramp. Now we can only stand by and watch you die." Some people just won't lift a finger to help, even when it's the easiest thing in the world. What kind of parents raise a child with such a cold heart? Oh, my darling, if you die, we won't want to live either. The three of us might as well haunt this neighborhood together as ghosts. The other residents were horrified. If someone actually died here, wouldn't it tank the property values? For all their panic, not a single person stepped forward to actually help. All they do is pester me to lend a hand right away. When they saw I wasn't responding, they went to hassle the property management. A few seconds later, there was a sharp click. The power went out in my apartment. 3. I glanced outside. Lights were on in all the other houses. Looks like the power outage is just at my place. Soon after, the property manager sent me a private message. Miss Wen, we're out of options. You're the best person to save the child. Just pull the kid inside, and we'll restore your water and electricity. I thought of the 4 large buckets of tap water I had stockpiled in the bathroom, the 8 big cases of bottled water in the storage room, along with over a dozen fully charged power banks and a flashlight, and smiled to myself. It's not that I don't want to help, it's just that the door is locked and I can't open it. Why don't you send someone up to unlock it for me? The property manager clicked his tongue in annoyance. If I could send someone up there, I'd just rescue them myself. Why would I need you? I grunted in agreement. Exactly. Sending your own people up to rescue them would be much faster than relying on me. Hurry up, the kid won't last much longer. If something happens, you'll be held responsible. When the typhoon warning was issued, the community management ordered the property management to oversee the homeowners and ensure they took proper precautions. This was to prevent glass from being blown out and injuring someone. They noticed the Wong family hadn't taken any measures, but not only did they fail to remind them, they actually told me to mind my own business after I pointed it out. At that point, I reminded him, you didn't do your job of oversight properly, and now you're telling me to mind my own business. I've saved the chat records. You know, in my past life, when I was being extorted for money, I knelt on the ground, desperately begging the property manager to check the surveillance footage, only to be told it had already been overwritten. The truth was, he just didn't want any trouble. Hearing me say this now, he started cursing and grumbling angrily on the other end of the phone. I reminded him with a smile, Director Lee, just so you know, I'm recording this. He hung up the phone immediately. Wang Xiaohong had already been holding on for 8 minutes. Someone saw through binoculars that her hands were bleeding from gripping, and her face was red and swollen from the wind. Her face was contorted by the wind, screaming for her mom and dad with eyes full of terror. My bedroom window is separated from the balcony by just a single wall. As I walked over, I could hear the child's clear, sharp cries. I said to her, your parents are right outside the door, waiting for your signal. She burst into loud, wailing sobs. Dad, I quit. I'm done. We don't need a bigger house. Mom, the wind is so strong. I want to go home right now. I don't want to stay here anymore. I recorded her voice and sent it to the group chat. Through the howling wind, everyone could hear the little girl's words. Mom, Dad, I'm so scared. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. I spoke up. So after all that, it turns out the parents were forcing their kid to put on an act. What kind of parents do that? And in a typhoon, no less. I was wondering how someone could get blown out of a building on such a low floor. Turns out they were just trying to scam some money. This isn't the first time their family has pulled a stunt like this. Whatever consequences they face, they brought it entirely upon themselves. Let's not go looking for trouble where there isn't any. Instantly, the deadlock was broken. Everyone seized on this point to berate Wang Dafeng and Lin Qiuyue. The property management even cut off their water and electricity. They also gathered evidence, threatening to report them to the police for child abuse. Only then did the couple sheepishly agree to take the child back. But I waited for several minutes and didn't hear any movement outside. After a while, Lin Qiuyue spoke up in the group chat, saying the door wouldn't open. She was slandering me. I simply used my phone to remotely control the smart lock and opened the door. Footsteps are approaching from outside, but they're not heading to the balcony. They're heading straight into my kitchen. Honey, there are snacks over here. Grab them quick. That selfish little wench. She's been hoarding all that good food without sharing a bite. After we were kind enough to lend her our wall, that comment absolutely cracked me up. This isn't the first time they've claimed my living room wall is on loan from them. They've tried to shake me down for money using that ridiculous excuse multiple times. Right now, they've nearly cleaned out all the supplies from my kitchen. I told the little girl that her parents were in the living room. She screamed at the top of her lungs. The couple didn't stop, though. They just kept carrying things out the door. As they neared the doorway, Lin Qiuyue glanced toward the balcony. Honey, what about Hong Hong? Wang Dafeng said indifferently. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to let that little bitch run circles around me. She's just a money pit anyway. If she dies, all the better. Gives me a reason to squeeze compensation out of her. Then we can have a son. Wouldn't that be better than raising a worthless girl? Lin Chuyua's hesitation vanished instantly. She nodded with a smile. You always have a clear head. At that very moment, the screaming reached its peak, punctuated by the dull, heavy thud of something hitting the ground. Outside on the balcony, there was no sound but the howling wind. The group chat was blowing up. Countless eyewitnesses posted the videos they had captured into the group. How tragic, absolutely heartbreaking. The child was first slammed against the wall by the wind, then fell onto the first floor glass awning, before finally hitting the ground. What on earth happened? Didn't the child's parents go over to try and save them? The family on the first floor is so unlucky. Their perfectly fine home has suddenly become a scene of tragedy. After quite a while, Lin Chuyua finally spoke up in the group chat, her voice choked with sobs. Someone, please help us. My husband and I just tried to get next door to save the child, but the door lock wouldn't budge. It just came back to me, a couple of days ago, my daughter was being a bit naughty and accidentally splashed some water on that girl. When Luo Chu, she threatened right then and there to kill my girl. She must have done this on purpose. My poor baby, she's still so little, her life hasn't even begun. What are we going to do? She sent a video in. In the video, Wang Dafeng, who was usually insufferably arrogant, was now collapsed over the little girl's body, weeping as if his heart were breaking, with tears and snot streaming down his face, frantically kowtowing and banging his head against the floor. Heavens above, if you want a life, take mine, please, give me back my daughter. I know I've been a bit too harsh with the neighbors, but my family is just so poor. I had no choice but to scrounge for food and drink where I could, but that's all I did. You can't punish my daughter for my sins, I'm begging you, take me instead. One had to admit, the man had some acting chops. This scene would bring a tear to the eye of even the most detached observer. The sentiment in the group chat gradually shifted in their favor. They all turned their accusations toward me. When Luo Chu, you're utterly despicable. Personal grudges are one thing, but how could you kick someone when they're down in a matter of life and death? She always looked like such a fragile, gentle girl. Who would have thought she could be so vicious? It's truly disgusting. You may not have killed the child with your own hands, but you are 100% a murderer. You must be held accountable for this. Soon after, the property management released our chat logs. They cherry-picked the conversation, only sharing the screenshots where I refused to help. Regarding the rescue of Wang Xiaohong, our property management fulfilled our duties to the best of our ability. This tragedy was ultimately caused by MS. When Luochu's refusal to cooperate, we are deeply sorry for the parents' grief. However, the parents, considering MS, Wen's youth and not wishing for her to waste her life in prison, have chosen to show leniency in this matter. He then laid out a few demands. After negotiations, Mr. Wang and MS. Lin stated that they would not hold MS when accountable for her mistake, provided she meets the following conditions. First, until Mr. and Mrs. Wang conceive another child, MS. Wen must take on Xiaohong's duties. This includes, but is not limited to, showing filial piety to the couple daily by cooking, cleaning, handling household chores, and funding their vacations. Second, after MS. Lin becomes pregnant, MS. Wen must cover all expenses for the child until he reaches adulthood. Third, if MS. Wen fails to comply with the first 2 points, she must pay a lump sum compensation of 2 million yuan to Mr. Wang and MS. Lin for their losses. Fourth, all expenses for Xiaohong's funeral and any other related costs will be borne solely by MS. Wen. This point is non-negotiable. After the property management representative finished speaking, they specifically tagged me and said, MS. Wen, these terms are already very lenient. If this ends up in court, you'll not only have to pay more, but you'll also waste unnecessary time and energy. Others began to chime in one after another. 2 million isn't even that much. If you can't pay, you work it off. That's only fair. What they lost was their precious child. What's the big deal about her paying 2 million? Forget 2 million, even 10 million is what she deserves. Don't forget, there's also the damage to the first floor. An elderly couple lives there, and their children work in other cities. We have to help them get justice. Just as everyone was buzzing around, pressuring me to pay up, I asked, who said the child was dead? 5. The group chat fell silent for a moment. Property manager Lee chimed in, we're at the scene, the child is unconscious, and the father is beside himself with grief. What do you have to say to that? I stated my opinion calmly. I've already called an ambulance, it'll be here soon. How strange. If it were my child, I'd rush them to the hospital immediately to try and save them, not just assume they were dead and use that to extort money from an innocent person, immediately. Several people in the group who had been quiet started voicing their opinions. That's right, a death certificate is only valid if issued by a hospital. The child is most likely just in a coma. The child's parents are acting rather strangely. Look at those demands. Not a single one is about honoring the child's memory. They're all for their own benefit. It's chilling when you think about it. Everyone else fell silent. Wang Dafeng stopped crying too and started shouting insults in the group chat. Bullshit. I've already lost the girl, and now you're slandering me too. I get it now. You three must be sleeping with that woman. That's why you're defending her against your own conscience. Reading that made my fists clench. Spreading such vile rumors comes so easily to them. The three reasonable people were so infuriated they stopped engaging entirely. He smugly pressed me to make a decision as soon as possible, either pay 2 million, or become their family's personal blood bank. By that time, I had already rushed down to the first floor. Upon seeing me, the husband and wife made a move as if to come and beat me up. 4 or 5 property management staff members glared at me with icy stares. Not a single person glanced at Wang Xiaohong lying on the ground. You murderer, I'll kill you. Wang Dafeng charged over. I drew the kitchen knife from behind my back and pointed it at him. He skidded to a halt, taking 2 frightened steps backward. What are you doing? I curled my lip. Aren't I the murderer already? My life is ruined anyway. I don't mind taking a few more people with me. At those words, the crowd that had gathered around silently backed away. I rushed over to Wang Xiaohong and reached out to check her pulse. It was still beating. Just then, the ambulance called back to say they had arrived at the entrance. I immediately gave them the unit number. It's Unit 101, Building 2. Please hurry, the child still has a pulse. Hearing this, the property management staff were stunned for a moment, then visibly relaxed. The weeping old man and old woman also looked pleasantly surprised. Only Mr. and Mrs. Wang Dafeng looked tense. That's not how a child's parents should react at all. It took Wang Dafeng several seconds to snap out of it before he came running over, putting on a show. My daughter, heaven truly heard my prayers and brought you back to me. I shoved him away with all my might. What do you think you're doing? He cursed. What the hell? What business is it of yours, a complete stranger? If I'm holding my own daughter, I pointed the kitchen knife at him. No one touches her except medical personnel. After witnessing the ugliness of human nature, I had to assume the worst in people. Wang Dafeng and his wife, with their preference for sons over daughters, clearly intended to trade their daughter's life for wealth and status. Therefore, he certainly wouldn't want his daughter to live. If he were to shake the child violently, he'd likely shake the last breath right out of her. Then my key witness would be gone. Thankfully, the ambulance arrived quickly and carefully placed the child on a stretcher before taking them away. They wouldn't let me ride along in the ambulance, and I didn't insist on going. Instead, I called the police and gave them a brief rundown of what had happened. By the time the ambulance reached the hospital, the police had also been dispatched. It is said that Wang Dafeng and his wife have been kept away, because I reported them for child abuse. They are not allowed near the child until the allegations are cleared. 2 days later, the typhoon had passed. Everything returned to its former state of calm, only I knew this was the calm before the real storm. On the very first day back to work, the police showed up at my door. They took me away in front of the entire company on suspicion of intentional assault. I didn't panic at all and immediately called the lawyer I had already arranged. After spending the morning getting the details, I understood the full situation. Wang Xiaohong made it through the critical period and survived, but was left in a vegetative state, dependent on a ventilator to live. Furthermore, she suffered severe fractures in both legs and will most likely never walk again. Even if she regains consciousness, she will likely spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Wang Dafeng was always stingy with his child and never bought her any insurance, so all the medical expenses had to be paid out of pocket. He's suing me for obstructing his rescue attempt, which he claims led to the tragedy. He's demanding 3 million in compensation, plus that I cover the child's lifelong medical expenses. The witness is the property manager, Li Sukai. There is currently no physical evidence. Consequently, I was released and sent home temporarily. Half a day later, the company announced my termination, and my landlady ordered me to vacate her property immediately and pay compensation for damage to her reputation. All my troubles piled up at once, before I could even sort things out here. I got a sudden call from back home. Someone had shown up at my parents' house with a protest banner demanding money, and the shock of it all made my parents faint. Remembering the tragedy from my past life, I immediately video called my relatives at home. When my parents saw me on the screen, they were in tears. asking me what was going on. After I explained the whole situation from start to finish, the two of them finally breathed a sigh of relief. We've done nothing wrong. So we've got nothing to fear. I'll go and send them packing right now. I thought for a moment and said, gossip is a fearful thing. Since everyone's here to watch the show, we might as well clear the air. Otherwise, even if we chase them off, it'll just give people more to talk about. I immediately sent the video I'd taken that day to a relative, asking her to help spread it around. I'd already had a trick up my sleeve long before that couple showed up. I placed a spare phone in both the kitchen and living room to record video, filling the gap of missing physical evidence from my past life. I had originally intended to use this in court, but it seems I'll have to release it early now. Through the live stream, I saw Wang Dafeng and his wife sitting at my doorstep, carrying on with their shameless tantrums and shouting. A significant number of villagers were taken in by their act, pointing fingers and hurling abuse at my parents. At that very moment, my cousin wheeled out a large television and played the surveillance footage for everyone to see. In the recording, Wang Xiaohong's cries for help could be heard clearly, yet, the couple was too busy stealing my supplies to pay any attention to their daughter's pleas. The video ended right there. Real life isn't a courtroom. You don't need a full set of witnesses and physical evidence to make a case. With the physical evidence in hand, everyone understood the situation perfectly. They raised their hose and charged at the couple. Wang Dafeng and Lin Qiuyue were drenched in filth and fled in disgrace. He sent me a message full of curses, vowing to make me pay. 7. The next day, Wang Dafeng returned. In a preemptive move, he posted a video admitting his mistake, that he was too busy stealing supplies to hear his daughter's cries for help. As a counter to my recording, the video only proves they didn't try to save anyone, but it doesn't prove I didn't commit murder. They insist, point blank, that I was the one who pushed the child. They completely ignored the video shot from the neighbor's third-person perspective. At first, everyone dismissed it as his rambling nonsense. However, that very afternoon, the situation took a dramatic turn. They released a video recorded by Wang Xiaohong before she fell into a vegetative state. In the video, the little girl, barely clinging to life, repeatedly insisted, "It was Sister Wen Luochu who told me to let go. She said if I let go, I could survive." As everyone knows, children do not lie. In my past life, her testimony had me completely cornered. Even with a second chance, I ended up right back where I started. It was useless. Even when I released all the audio and video recordings from that time, she insisted I said it. So in her mind, I said it. I didn't fall into the self-justification trap like I did in my past life. I insisted they produce physical evidence, unable to provide solid evidence. They brought in the media to sensationalize the matter, attempting to use public pressure to force a private settlement. Their demand escalated from 3 million to 5 million. During that time, Wang Dafeng and his wife went live every day from their daughter's hospital bed, playing the victim for sympathy. They leveraged the compassion of netizens to raise over 1 million yuan in just a few days. I watched the viewer count in the live stream. I waited for it to peak, then walked into the hospital room. The moment she saw me, Lin Qiuyue burst into tears. "What are you doing here?" Glaring at the fruit basket in my hand, she said furiously, "You're the one who put my daughter in this state. I don't need your hypocritical sympathy." Wang Dafeng pointed the camera at me. "Take a look, everyone. This is the culprit who encouraged my daughter to let go. She was jealous that my daughter has parents who love her so dearly, and she seized the chance to get her revenge." I've seen that look of insane jealousy in her eyes directed at my daughter more than once. It always happened whenever I bought my daughter a gift. With just a few sentences, I was flooded with tens of thousands of hateful comments in the livestream chat. I calmly set the fruit basket aside, took another item out of the bag. "You too, don't get so worked up. With so many people watching today, all I'm going to do is talk to Xiaohong. I won't do anything else, I promise." They both knew my appearance had boosted the livestream's popularity, so they weren't actually going to kick me out. Instead, they just kept playing the victim for the camera. Thankfully, their attention was completely on the live stream, so they didn't notice me showing the recording to Xiaohong. The recording clearly captured their chauvinistic remarks about favoring sons over daughters. "Honey, what are we going to do about Hong Hong? We'll do whatever we have to. I'm not going to let that little bitch run circles around me. She's just a money pit anyway. If she dies, all the better. It gives me a reason to squeeze compensation out of her mother. Then we can try for a son. Wouldn't that be better than raising a worthless girl?" The sudden, loud noise left the couple utterly stunned. Xiao Hong, the comatose patient in the bed, suddenly bolted upright. She burst into tears, crying, "Mom, Dad, I don't want a little brother." 8. The sight left the couple utterly stunned. They hurriedly covered Xiao Hong's mouth. The child, however, wailed loudly and desperately tried to claw at them. "You said I was your favorite. You said you didn't want a little brother or sister. It was you who told me to swing on the balcony and make videos to scam people. You can't abandon me." Wang Dafeng was terrified. He even forgot to turn off the live stream and slapped Wang Xiaohong across the face. "Shut the hell up." I glanced at the barrage of comments in the live stream. The situation had already turned around in no time. "I'm sure the whole internet will soon know exactly what kind of people that couple is." I slipped away amidst the chaos. "Contact my lawyer. Let's move to the next step without delay." With Wang Xiaohong's testimony, everything is moving along much more smoothly. Wang Dafeng and Lin Qiuyue have been found guilty of child abuse. They're definitely going to prison. But I believe the best way to torment a person isn't to send them to their death, nor is it to send them to prison, where they'd live off the state's resources with food, drink, and shelter. It is, instead, to condemn them to a suffering with no end in sight. Wang Xiaohong, after becoming disabled, became the lifelong suffering of their family. In the end, the two were each sentenced to 1 year in prison. They were also ordered to pay compensation for emotional distress to me and the elderly couple on the first floor. Li Sukai from the Property Management Department was sentenced to 6 months for harboring the offenders and providing false testimony. My reputation was restored, and I even gained some public attention in the process. I capitalized on the trend by going live to build a following, setting me on the path to becoming a sales streamer. Life was getting better and better. 6 months later, I learned that Wang Xiaohong had been discharged from the hospital. She is currently staying with relatives. It said her aunt treated her very poorly. It's understandable, really. Who has the patience for someone who can't even use the bathroom on their own? That child is thoroughly spoiled and has a terrible temper to boot. The moment they don't get what they want to eat, they throw a tantrum. Her aunt was so furious that she would frequently withhold food from her. Every time her aunt visited the prison, she would stress that the child's parents should behave well so they could be released early to care for their child. Knowing that life outside would be a living hell, Wang Dafeng would constantly pick fights on purpose. As it turned out, what the other inmates despised most were those who bullied children. They were beaten half to death every day. They didn't want to spend a single extra day in prison. On the day the couple was released, the child's aunt deliberately pushed the child to the prison gate and ran off. With their criminal records, the couple became high-priority surveillance targets. Terrified of returning to the prison where they were beaten daily, the two men dared not make a move. Their money had long since run out. They had no choice but to take their child and return to the countryside to farm the land. Rumor has it that on the day they returned, the villagers pelted them with cow dung. It looks like tough times are ahead. Sure enough, after just a month back, the three of them moved out. Looking utterly defeated, someone saw Wang Xiaohong in her wheelchair, her eyes red and swollen, a clear sign she'd been crying often. Lin Qiuyue was also covered in bruises, likely beaten by Wang Dafeng. A useless man only knows how to beat his wife and children. In the past, I might have felt sorry for him. But now, I just think he's getting what he deserves. The darkness in their lives seems to stretch on without end. As for me, my career is on the rise, marching towards a brighter tomorrow. The end. That's all for the first story. Don't go away. The next one is even more exciting. I was the school's notorious troublemaker. After I got expelled for bullying the principal, no other school would take me. My dad gritted his teeth, sold everything we had, and scraped together enough to send me to an elite private high school. Before I left for school, he gave me endless warnings and advice. You must get along with your classmates. If you offend even one of them, our family is finished. In the first week of school, I skipped class with the wheelchair-bound young master to go play bumper cars. In the second week of school, I took the anorexic young lady over the wall to eat spicy hot pot. In the third week of school, the teacher called my dad in. My father's legs went weak as he walked through the door. The teacher looked at him apologetically. Mr. Yunshu, I'm so sorry. Yunshu is so popular that her classmates got into a fight over her. 1. My dad found me while he was collecting scrap, and he raised me on the money he made from it. Just like Xiaohua, Dubai, and Wang Kai at home, I'm part of his family, according to his tall tales. Back around the turn of the millennium, he was a carefree rich kid. He was never one for grand ambitions. And halfway through taking over the family business, he got sidetracked rescuing stray dogs, and from then on, there was no turning back. The year his family went bankrupt, he used what little money he had left to rent a scrapyard. He made a living collecting scrap and looking after his dogs, getting by well enough. It was a snowy winter's day. Someone left a cardboard box at the entrance to the scrapyard, as usual. He assumed it was another abandoned puppy, the moment he opened the box. He heard my faint cry, the dog was saved, and the man was saved in an even greater sense. From that winter on, we had to tighten our belts and live frugally. My father was only 22 that year and didn't yet feel the hardship. He was single-mindedly devoted to raising me like a little princess, but something must have gone wrong somewhere along the line. I'd be clutching a doll, then flipping over a card table on the street. I'd be wearing a princess dress, then smearing mud all over the neighbors' windows. I'd be wearing a pink hair clip, then beating up the schoolyard bullies who collected protection money. Even a mighty tiger can be bullied by dogs when it's down on the plains. For someone like my dad, who went from a young master to a poor man, mockery was inevitable. When I came across people like that, I made a point of tossing snap poppers into their yards in the dead of night, and every single one of those snap poppers had pink wrapping paper. This cycle repeated for over half a month. I only stopped when the person, utterly miserable, came to my house to apologize. Later on, I started high school. In the summer, the dorm had scheduled power outages. It got so hot in the middle of the night that the room was filled with groans of misery. Every morning I woke up, my hair was as damp as if I'd just washed it. Someone wrote a letter to the principal's suggestion box. There was a camera mounted above it, and a paper shredder inside. During the routine Monday flag-raising ceremony, I hoisted the principals to pay up the flagpole. By the time the principal realized what was happening, the wig had already reached the top. That stunt made me infamous overnight. And no high school would accept me after that. I didn't mind. I just put on some rubber gloves and started sorting the new batch of recyclables we'd collected at home. It's fine, Dad. I was never really cut out for studying anyway. No, you still have to get into university. My dad has a real fixation on going to university. He firmly believed that going to university could change his destiny. Take his primary school deskmate, for example. A poor kid who started a company after graduating, while my dad was still cluelessly bumbling along. That guy had already bought out his family business. With red-rimmed eyes, my father took a certificate of merit from the drawer, carefully running his fingers over it again and again. You're the first child in our Jean family to ever get an award certificate. No matter what, you must continue your education. I moved closer, puzzled. On the bright red certificate were several large characters traced in gold. Little hygiene role model of the kindergarten. Damn. I really don't have time for this nonsense. 2. My dad searched high and low, and finally found an elite private high school. Despite the steep tuition, he gritted his teeth and somehow managed to get me enrolled. I'm just not cut out for studying. I don't care. The school will figure something out. I had no choice. The money was already paid, so I just had to go along with his plan. The day before school started, my dad gave me endless warnings and advice. Listen, kiddo. All the trouble you've caused before is nothing. If you upset even one of these people, our family is finished for good. Just try to get along with them. Actually, never mind. Mid-sentence, my dad shook his head. That's probably asking too much of you. Just remember to keep your head down and don't get involved in other people's business. It was our first time leaving home for school, and having not been to the city in years, we completely underestimated the sheer force of the morning rush hour. The overpass was completely gridlocked. By the time we got to school, the class was already more than half over. I sprinted across the campus with my backpack on. A guy in a wheelchair nearby was also hurrying along. His wheelchair was electric, but it was moving pretty slowly. Without a second thought, I grabbed the handles and started pushing him forward. When you do a good deed, you just can't help but show off a little. The wind rushed into my ears as I lifted my head. Hey, which building are you headed to? The boy in the wheelchair said through gritted teeth. I'm going home. 3. I froze, instinctively turning the steering wheel to the left to slow down. The car came to a screeching halt, but the next second, the person was thrown clear. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I quickly helped the person up from the ground. Oops, I used a bit too much force. A sharp, crisp crack came from his arm. The boy was in so much pain his voice trembled. You, don't touch me. He's already in this much pain. Might as well give it a shot. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, just like I usually do when holding a puppy. Once I was sure his full weight was leaning against me, I cupped my hands under his elbows. What are you doing? Trust me, this might hurt a little. Try to bear with it. As he raised his elbow to its highest point, he couldn't help but let out a soft whimper of pain. The next second, a few audible pops were heard, and the joint was successfully reset. See, told you to trust me. I do this for my dog all the time. That sounded like an insult. The boy shot me a glare, his expression dark and stormy. I'm so sorry, classmate. Let me carry you up. I crouched down, hooked my arms under his knees, and scooped him up in a bridal carry. His feet suddenly left the ground, and he instinctively wrapped his arms around my neck. The cool mint, tinged with a hint of bitterness, washed over me completely. I have to say, for someone who looked so tall and long-limbed, he was surprisingly light to hold. Worried he might be uncomfortable, I gave him a gentle sway in my arms to adjust our position. His breathing grew ragged, and his whole body began to thrash violently against my chest. You brute, have you no manners at all, in the face of absolute power? The difference between him and me was like that between a tiger and a kitten. The corners of his eyes were red, his beautiful peach blossom eyes brimming with fury. He had fair skin, a straight nose, thin lips, and was tall and long-limbed. Soft, dark hair cascaded over broad shoulders. I squinted, feeling a slight flutter in my heart. Honestly, I'd never seen anyone so beautiful before. A mischievous impulse was itching at me from the inside. I put on a fierce face and growled, "Keep squirming and I'll throw you out." They immediately went still, letting me hold them without a struggle. Only their mouth was still putting up a brave front. "You'd better hope I never find out who you are, or you're dead." I glanced at the name card on his school uniform and grinned. "Then I'll take responsibility for you before I die. Chin Eugene, 4. From that fall just now." Chin Eugene's palms were covered in scrapes. Worried he might have other injuries, I steered him towards the infirmary. The infirmary was quite busy, with every bed in the rest area occupied by patients on 4 drips. I drew the curtain around the cubicle and waited outside. The doctor came out a moment later, carrying iodine, Yunnan Bai Yao, and some bandages. "It's nothing serious, just a few scratches on my palm." Thank goodness. If he'd actually gotten hurt from that fall, Dad would have lost his mind. I took the medicine, lifted the bed curtain, and slipped inside. Chin Eugene sat on the bed, silent, his fists clenched tightly. I leaned in and whispered in his ear, "If you don't cooperate, I'm going to kiss you. You have classmates on both sides, you know. If you make any noise." Chin Eugene jolted, his eyes widening in alarm, his hands flying open. I smiled, my eyes crinkling. "That's more like it." When he fell, the palm of his hand must have landed on the gravel on the road. The cuts were numerous, some deep and some shallow. He really was a young master. His fingers were pale and slender, his skin fine and smooth. My movements grew gentler and gentler, and when I finally finished wrapping the gauze, I couldn't resist giving it a little rub. Chin Eugene looked like she wanted to kill me. I put on an innocent face, as if I hadn't done a thing. "All right, I'll stop teasing you. I'll walk you to the school gate. I reckon his wound will heal up after one more application of medicine tomorrow." As I walked him to the school gate, I called out to stop him. "I'll come by to dress your wound again tomorrow at noon, after school lets out." Chin Eugene frowned, clearly looking like he didn't want to see me again. I grabbed the sides of his wheelchair and pulled hard, yanking him right up to me. Looking down at him, I plucked the name card pinned to his chest. Class 3A, Chin Eugene, 5. Even elite schools group students by academic performance. Class A is the top tier, while Class K is the bottom. With my grades, I'm stuck in Class K. My dad found out that only the absolute cream of the crop get into Class A. Real talent is what matters here. You can't just buy your way in. It made me go out of my way to avoid Class A at school. Chin Eugene finally got into a luxury car I didn't recognize. The driver deftly folded up the wheelchair and stowed it away. As he was leaving, he rolled down the window, his gaze inscrutable. "What's your name? I'll tell you tomorrow." "Yeah, right." That look in his eyes was anything but friendly. If I tell him who I am, he'll probably dig into my background and turn my life upside down. Anyway, once my injury heals tomorrow, I won't have any more contact with him. If he's still upset by then, I'll just smooth things over with a few kind words, just as expected of me. Problem solved perfectly. By the time I finally made it to Class K, the first period was already over. The homeroom teacher wore glasses and looked like a fresh college graduate, young and female. She had no chance of keeping these privileged students in line. "All right, settle down, everyone. This is our new transfer student, Zhang Yunshu. Let's give her a warm welcome." The only applause came from the homeroom teacher herself. The audience was full of scrutinizing stares. I couldn't afford to cross the homeroom teacher, and I didn't want any trouble. The only empty seat was in the back row by the window, so I grabbed my bag and headed straight for it. The October weather has turned cool. If it weren't for the trash can, this would actually be a great spot to sleep. This is an English class. The elite high school conducts all classes in English. I tried to piece together the few words I knew. I'd just figured out what the teacher said in the last sentence, and then I had no idea which problem he was talking about in the next. Forget it. I'm just going to sleep. I can put up with the air being a bit smelly. While I was drifting in and out of sleep, I could hear people murmuring outside the window. 6. Jingy, why did you throw away the invitation I left on your desk? The girl lowered her voice. I don't want to go. It's just a birthday party. You come every year for my birthday, don't you? But I don't want to go this year. Why not? I already told my buddies I'd definitely invite you. I said I don't want to go. And that's final. Shinjingi, what are you pretending for? You used to chase after me shamelessly, now you're just a bit skinnier and better looking than before. That's all. I still have that photo of you from middle school where you were as fat as a pig. If you dare not go. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a glass of water, flung the window open, and threw it out. Seriously, man, are you an animal? Can you not understand plain English? I've had a terrible temper when waking up since I was a kid. My dad has always been too scared to wake me up himself, so he sends the dog in. I can put up with the stench, but the non-stop nagging is really over the line. I splashed water right in the guy's face. The girl sitting across from him didn't get so much as a drop on her. What the hell? Who the fuck are you? I'm your mother. The whole class had been dozing off. My shout jolted everyone wide awake. The teacher on the podium was frozen in place. Shit, the drenched boy wiped his face frantically and charged over, fist raised, quick as a flash. I yanked the window shut. The boy punched the glass, making the whole window pane shudder. I winced. Ouch. The boy outside was in so much pain his face contorted. It's not your hand that hit the window. What the hell are you ouching about? Heh, feels good, man, just yelling on your behalf. The guy was absolutely furious, pointing at my face and starting to yell, fuck you. Don't think I won't hit a girl, get the hell out here. I opened the window and looked him up and down. You sure you want me to come out? You can't beat me. He grabbed me by the collar, his face flushing a deep crimson. I seized the opportunity, gripping both sides of his wrist and digging my thumbs right into the joint. The pain made him release his grip instantly. I kept the pressure on, not letting him break free. Is your mouth connected to your ass? Can't you open it without spewing filth? Is that the only way you know how to talk? The next second, I let go, and he fell back onto the ground in a heap. Shinjingi, fine, you just wait. He scrambled to his feet, spat viciously on the ground, and scurried away in a panic. Only the girl beside me remained. She lifted a face so pitiful it tugged at my heartstrings and spoke to me softly. Thank you. 07, after class. The area around my desk immediately became a hub of activity. A group of girls chattered excitedly as they crowded around. Holy crap, you're so cool. You even dared to hit Hwatian. That little punk Hwatian is used to throwing his weight around. The only person he doesn't dare mess with is the tragically handsome crown prince of the school. He'd probably kick a dog just for walking past him. This isn't the first time he's cornered the school belle by the stairs. We're all so sick of him. Hey, classmate, your name is Jean. Jean what again? I propped my chin on my hand and looked at her. Jean Yunshu. Right, Jean Yunshu. I need to go home and take my herbal medicine. Being a straight girl all the time isn't the solution. I immediately waved my hand. Yeah, no thanks. The main thing is, this guy's a total pushover. If it were someone tougher, I might not have stood a chance. Not impressive. Hwatian has been training in boxing for years. The bell for class rang out. The girls got to their feet, reluctant to leave. Anyway, I really can't thank you enough. Seeing that scumbag get his comeuppance was so satisfying. He should probably lay low for a while after this. Right. Hwatian did indeed lay low for a whole day. He spent the entire day digging into my background instead. The next day at noon, after school let out, I headed towards Class A with the medicine. Class A was in the building next door, and to get there I had to walk through a covered walkway. At that hour, everyone went straight downstairs to the cafeteria, so the walkway was nearly empty. Hwatian was coming through the walkway with a few others, and we ran into each other. Jean Yunshu. Well, look who came to me first. 08. Hwatian was holding a baseball bat. I could see 4 or 5 people trailing behind, each one armed with a collapsible baton. And here I thought you were such a big shot. Turns out you're just a lousy trash picker. How dare you act tough in front of me? He spat viciously on the ground. It must have been tough for you to get into this school. Why don't you let me help you out? His smile was sickening. I took a step back, and then another. What are you trying to do? This place has security cameras, you know. Hwatian grew even more arrogant. The people behind him all started laughing along. Jean Yunshu, this corridor is newly built. There are no cameras, so that's how it is. I slapped him right across the face. His smile was still frozen in place when I backhanded him again. Those 2 slaps knocked some sense into Hwatian. What are you acting so tough for? There are no cameras here. I stomped down hard on his foot, before he could regain his balance. I grabbed the back of his neck with one hand and slammed his head toward the wall. Hua Tian had seen my strength before, and his legs went weak with fear. He just wanted to teach me a lesson. I want to make him suffer. It can't be helped. Sometimes you need a villain to deal with a villain. You think I'm joking with you? Help me. What are you all doing? I snatched the baseball bat right out of Hua Tian's hands and raised it high. Take one more step and I'll crack his skull open. The reckless fear the crazy. And the crazy fear those with nothing to lose. The whole group didn't even have the nerve to step forward. The atmosphere remained deadlocked. I still couldn't get away. A cool, clear voice came from the distance. What are you all doing? 9. I thought it was a teacher passing by. I instantly shoved the baseball bat back into Hua Tian's hands. My voice went all high-pitched, with only one hand still firmly pinching the flesh of his thigh. I'm so scared, don't hit me. Hua Tian was in so much pain he saw stars, hearing me turn the tables on him. He was so furious he could barely get his words out. I didn't. I rolled my eyes hard and swatted his annoying head out of the way. Before my fake tears could even fall, I looked up and saw it was Chen Eugene speaking. TCH, I couldn't handle 6 guys on my own to begin with, and now I've got dead weight to carry. This just makes it even harder. I snatched the baseball bat right out of Hua Tian's hands. Lay a finger on me or the guy in the wheelchair, and you're dead, got it? Hua Tian started crying before I did, using his last ounce of strength to break free from my grip. He scrambled and stumbled his way over to Chen Eugene's side. Brother Gene, help me. That bitch Zhang Yunshu is trying to kill me. The few guys Hua Tian had brought with him also scurried to stand behind Chen Eugene. I was completely dumbfounded on the spot. Chen Eugene ignored him, and the wheelchair he was sitting in rolled toward me. So your name is Zhang Yunshu. 10. Hua Tian. What are you doing? The girl who had rejected Hua Tian yesterday also appeared on the corridor. I remember her name is Shinjingi. She was panting heavily, hands braced on her knees, as if she had just run from somewhere. I'm going to report your harassment to the school, every last detail of it. If you dare bother her again, I'll have my mother cut off all business between the Shen and Hua families. Hua Tian was furious and frantic. The spot where I'd slapped him swollen and raised, his leg, which I'd pinched, made him limp as he walked. Look at me. On the other hand, not a hair out of place from head to toe. Shinjingi ran towards me, and as she passed Hua Tian, she gave his shoulder a hard shove. Chen Eugene and she stood by my side, one on the left and one on the right. The Chen family will also reconsider our cooperative relationships with each of your families, unless, Chen Eugene left the sentence hanging. But everyone behind Hua Tian understood. The injuries on Hua Tian are from his own fall. That's right, we all saw it. How despicable. How could he harass Shen like that? Thank goodness this student, Jean, stepped up bravely and protected Shen. Damn, my eyes went wide in an instant. So that's what Chen Eugene meant. That's a complete frame-up. The situation went from 1 against 6 to 8 against 1 in an instant. I'm genuinely thrilled. 11. There's a private elevator for Chen Eugene in the academic building. The 5th floor of the cafeteria is Chen Eugene's private kitchen. Even I, as dense as I am, finally caught on. Chen Eugene is exactly the tragically perfect crown prince they keep gossiping about. Damn it, I wish I hadn't teased him yesterday. Following behind the two of them, I was filled with regret. It's a good thing Shinjingi was there too, so it wasn't quite as awkward. I've already had lunch, so I won't go up with you. See you this afternoon, Yunshu. Shinjingi smiled and waved at me. I'm on the verge of tears, not going to apply the medicine. Chen Eugene's wheelchair came to a halt, gritting my teeth. I took a step to follow him. Yes, I am. After this last treatment, we're done. There's nothing left between us. I didn't even do anything to him. The 5th floor of the cafeteria is completely different from the 4 floors below. The sofa, the bar counter, the dining table. Everything is arranged according to personal preference. After lunch, I carefully unwrapped the bandage from Chen Eugene's hand. The wounds were healing nicely. Even the deepest one had already scabbed over. Once we remove the bandage tomorrow, there'll be no need to rewrap it. Will it be better by tomorrow? I nodded and pointed to his palm. Look, even the deepest one has scabbed over. Chen Eugene didn't speak, his gaze heavy, as if he was pondering something. Today, the gauze was wrapped in only a thin layer. The wound is almost healed anyway. The bandage is just to keep the powder from rubbing off. I won't be coming to see you tomorrow. Okay, thanks for having my back today. 12. Finally got rid of that walking disaster. Chen Eugene. I returned to the classroom in the afternoon, feeling completely at ease. 2 unexpected guests had appeared next to my seat. Yesterday's trash can had been removed, replaced by 2 new desks. Shinjingi was seated in the middle. Her petite, heart-shaped face lit up the moment she saw me. Yunshu. Over here. Chen Eugene sat beside her, looking as if he were grinding his teeth. I sat back down in my seat in a daze. Compared to Chin Eugene, Shinjingi couldn't suppress the smile at the corner of her mouth. I need to write a formal statement to the school about Huatian harassing me. I was too scared yesterday, so I don't remember a lot of things clearly. That's why I had to transfer to Class K from Class A. Wait a second, Class A, you're saying you transferred from Class A to be a guest student in Class K? Seriously, what's the point? Chin Eugene spoke up coldly from the side, something that could be solved by just adding a WeChat contact, but Shin just has to make a big production out of it. Shinjingi looked at me, her eyes instantly welling up. Her voice trembled as she said, Yunshu, did I disturb your studies by coming over so suddenly? I immediately waved my hands and thumped my chest in assurance. No, I don't study at all. I'm just here to coast. As soon as I said it, something felt off. Seeing Shinjingi on the verge of tears, I shot Chin Eugene a fierce glare. Then what are you doing here? Are you auditing classes too? No. I was just about to let out a long sigh of relief. I transferred in from Class A. My breath caught in my throat. Seriously, what are you even after this time? Chin Eugene looked at me with a resentful gaze and extended his palm. The bandage applied at noon was now loose and sagging. The deepest wound revealed tender, pink flesh. I immediately grabbed his hand to look. Wasn't it scabbed over at noon? How did it get like this so quickly? I don't know. You've been the one handling it all along. Shinjingi's smile froze on her face. Such a tiny scratch. And you're already bothering your classmates, Miss Chen. You really are the delicate type who can't take care of herself, aren't you? The atmosphere grew inexplicably tense. Shinjingi, Chin Eugene, all right, it's no trouble at all, really. Seeing that the two of them were about to start arguing, I quickly stepped in and pulled them apart. 13. Everyone around me is absolutely losing their minds over the gossip. When I went to the water dispenser to fill my bottle, the versions I've heard are beyond ridiculous. So, what's the latest episode in the K-Class Burning Winter saga today? The new transfer student wins the campus belle's heart. The young master chases his love across 1,000 miles. Long live the girls. I'm a proud Jingyun shipper. Well, we Yuyun fans won't back down either. Is anyone else a Zhang Yunshu solo stan? Don't you think her little fangs are super cool when she smiles? Girl, I feel you. That whole chaotic mess only lasted an afternoon. The very next day, Shinjingi was forced by the school to return to Class A. The reason given was that the transfer procedures were not properly followed. Chin Eugene became my only desk mate. To be honest, he's a pretty dull person, attending class, doing exercises, and sleeping. He hardly ever speaks. Most of the time, I'm the one talking while he just listens. And he's widely known as a total workaholic. He's always the first one to arrive at school. He was always the last one to leave after school. I've never even seen him use the restroom. Sitting next to a top student as a struggling one is incredibly stressful. When I went to the water dispenser, I thought I'd fill one for him too, only to realize for the first time that he didn't even have a water bottle. Skipping bathroom breaks and working overtime were nothing but manifestations of his hidden pride. While the moon waxes and wanes, he remained forever a crescent. In the late afternoon, as the sun was setting, I leaned close to his ear and whispered, Chin Eugene, have you ever skipped class? 14. Teacher, Chin Eugene needs to use the bathroom. Before Chin Eugene could even answer, I shot my hand up like a peacock showing off its feathers. His eyes widened, and he reached out to cover my mouth. I quickly pinned his hand down, hiding it under the desk. The teacher nodded and continued with the lesson. The wind howled past my ears. The horizon was ablaze. Seizing the moment when the guard went back to the duty room to get water, I hunched down and pulled open the side gate. I pushed Chin Eugene and we made a run for it. The young man had never done anything so rebellious. His eyes were frighteningly bright. Zhang Yunshu, you could have just said you were coming out. What are you doing in there? What do you know? Skipping class requires immersion. Just walking out isn't real skipping. Now that you're out, you're on my schedule. I'll show you a good time, and you're picking up the tab. I noticed there was a playground near the school on my way in. It wasn't really a proper playground, though. It was just a few small play structures outside the shopping center, but I never got to play on them. Same goes for Chin Eugene. When the boss wheeled out a pink bumper car and placed it in front of us, my eyes lit up like stars. Chin Eugene just sat there, utterly bewildered. Zhang Yunshu, are you sure I can handle this? I hooked my arms under his knees and swept him up into a bridal carry. Trust me. Have I ever lied to you? His breath fanned warm against the nape of my neck. Our hearts were pounding like mad. He must have been looking forward to it, too, just like any normal kid, playing with all that seemingly chaotic, nonsensical stuff. 2 people to a bumper car. He was in charge of steering, and I handled the gas pedal. Everyone's a total noob when they're just starting out, a grade schooler. with some nimble maneuvering, pinned both of us right into the corner. Jinyojin's competitive spirit kicked in, and he started ramming the kid's bumper relentlessly. It was a showdown, no two ways about it. I clung to the car for dear life, squealing with excitement. Go, go, Jinyojin, car on the right, left, there's a car on the left too. The brief skirmish was over, and my chest was heaving. The sun had completely set in the distance. The carousel across from the bumper cars lit up. I looked at Jinyojin's profile. A small patch of light flickered in his eyes, like dancing flames. Gone was the shadow that had clouded his face before. Jinyojin, I raised an eyebrow at him. Not bad teamwork. Another round, 15. In the end, Jinyojin was taken home by his family that day. I was worried he'd get an earful when he got home, so I was frantically giving him advice. My messages went unanswered. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I got a text. Something came up at home. I'll be back in 3 days. He didn't come to school the next day. During lunch, Shinjingi carried her tray over and sat down beside me. Don't worry, Yunshu. I asked my parents to look into it. Jinyu has gone back to the old family home. He won't be back for a few days. I nodded. I know. He sent me a message on WeChat. She looked a bit surprised. He still has access to his phone. You can't use your phone when you go back home. I suppose so. Their family has a lot of rules. I thought to myself, no wonder he never replied to any of my messages after that. On Shinjingi's plate was only a boiled egg. I recalled that when I first met her, Huatian had mentioned something about her weight. I handed her the portion of crispy fried pork I had beside me. Losing weight just for other people's opinions, isn't that just torturing yourself? I haven't touched this crispy pork. It's for you. Shinjingi let out a sigh. I wish I could eat it too. I messed up my relationship with food a few years ago while dieting. Now, I just instinctively recoil at the sight of it. Everything. Pretty much all the regular, everyday stuff. I don't buy it. The world is full of self-proclaimed food connoisseurs. Do you really know what you're eating? Come on. I'm taking you out to eat. 16. I took Shinjingi out by climbing over the wall. On the other side of the back wall was a whole street of food stalls. The first place we came to was a malatang joint with that thick, rich broth. I grabbed Shinjingi's hand and we went right in. A bowl of spicy hot pot, loaded with veggies, meat, and pre-made fish balls. Shinjingi mustered up her courage for the 5th time and picked up a piece of tempura. One bite in, and her expression completely changed. I watched her with a grin. Go on, eat it. One bite and you'll be speechless. While eating the vegetables, Shinjingi still felt an instinctive urge to gag. The next bite, a pre-made meatball, forced it back down. I was utterly dumbfounded watching this. She doesn't seem to mind the processed stuff at all. The ultimate state of enjoying a meal is when you're too engrossed to even speak. By the end, the wide noodles were coated in sesame paste. The paste coated the bowl coated your mouth. And your mouth coated your throat. We just sat there, dazed from the carb overload, anorexia, not a chance. When Jinyojin came back to school, his world had fallen apart. Shinjingi, what are you doing back in class K? 17. When my dad walked through the door, his legs went weak. The homeroom teacher stepped forward. I'm so sorry, Mr. Yunshu, my father. His eyes rimmed red, looked at me and let out a deep sigh. It's all right. Teacher, please, just tell me. What kind of trouble has she gotten into this time? Our family's circumstances are difficult, but whatever the cost is, I'll find a way to cover it. The teacher quickly waved her hands. No, it's just that she's too popular. Before she could finish, Jinyojin and Shinjingi barged in, mid-argument. These two, usually so quiet, were now going at it like seasoned debaters. Unlike the initial passive-aggressive remarks, this time they went straight for personal attacks. You're such a fake. If you hadn't been stirring up trouble behind my back, I wouldn't have gotten called back by Class A, and you're one to talk. Stealing someone's seatmate when they're not around. How shameless. I went easy on you this time. Next time, I'll make sure your family grounds you for a month. So that's how they found out I wasn't at school. The homeroom teacher was on the verge of tears as the two were about to come to blows. Mr. Yunshu. Please take Yunshu home for a few days. Forget about the year-end bonus. If these two troublemakers start fighting, ugh, the teaching qualification exam is no walk in the park either. My dad walked out of the school in a complete daze. He fished a cigarette out of his pocket and took a moment to collect himself. How many days are you staying home? I waved my hand dismissively. Ding dong, chicken, ding dong, chicken. 18. The pickup truck was taking me back to the scrapyard. A small crowd of onlookers had gathered at the entrance. At a glance, I saw they were all people I'd bullied, to one degree or another. Well, got yourself expelled again. So, which young master or miss did you piss off this time? Do tell, we could use a laugh. Do you really think you and your old man can afford to cross them? You'd better pack your bags and get out of town tonight. Yunshu, your father has suffered so much raising you. He might as well have let you freeze to death back then. I clenched my fist, but my father stopped me. In his middle age, the corners of his eyes crinkled with laughter lines. Oh, Brother Wang, Brother Liu, Auntie Li, it's not that serious. Our Yunshu isn't dropping out of school. She's the best child, so sensible and well-behaved. A bystander snorted in derision. Lao Zhan, you're just swallowing your pride and bearing it. Exactly. We know perfectly well what kind of person Yunshu is. They're actually right. Raising me really took a lot out of my dad. I don't want to cause him any more trouble. The clenched fist relaxed, revealing a palm bruised purple from fingernail marks. Better keep a tighter rein on your kids from now on. If they don't go to school, they'll end up stealing and thieving. Every word, carried on the wind, cut deeper than any blade. Ah, don't be so sure. A girl's got plenty of options. She could always go stand under the overpass. Before the sentence was finished, my father lunged forward in a single, furious stride. He punched him right in the nose. The man who said this was old Wang, the owner of the scrapyard property. He used to run with a rough crowd, and even in his old age, he's still a nasty piece of work. You dare say one more word about her, I swear to God. 19. My father never laid a hand on anyone, and that lot weren't afraid of him either. But they're scared of me, ever since I was a kid. I fought back like my life depended on it. They've all seen it firsthand. When I was little, I couldn't understand why people were so cruel. Was it because my family's scrap collecting business was too dirty? Is it because the dogs are too noisy? Yet my father would get up before dawn to clean the yard, with all the scrap neatly stacked. All the dogs were also trained to be exceptionally well behaved. But the sounds of mockery and sarcasm still lingered. It was only later that I understood, that was the purest form of malice in the human heart. After a meal, people always need someone to make fun of, especially those who used to do well but have now fallen behind them. My father was the first in line. I was the butt of their jokes, mocked in every possible way by the card players on the street corner. So when I grew up, the first thing I did was flip over that card table right in the middle of the street. The second thing was to hurl mud at the windows of every house whose occupants had bullied my father. The neighbors came knocking, baring their teeth in anger. With a long howl, I commanded my pack of canine soldiers to guard the entrance. The world has truly turned upside down. People snarl and bare their teeth like dogs, yet the dog sits at the main gate, dignified as a person. Ever since then, everyone said old Jean was cursed with bad luck, raising a child only to end up with a little demon. But my dad never blamed me for the trouble I caused him. He knew I was just trying to protect him. What kind of parent needs their child to protect them? More and more people came running to watch the commotion. My father knocked old Wang to the ground. Every punch landed with a sickening thud. Every blow drew blood. Old Wang roared, his clouded eyes bulging from their sockets. Zhan Xingqiu, stop fighting. I'll give the scrapyard back to you. You don't have to pay me rent anymore. Have you forgotten? This used to be your family's distillery. Wasn't it your dream to get it running again? My father's eyes were bloodshot, his fist clenched and raised high. I don't care. Seeing he was about to be knocked out, I desperately rushed forward and grabbed him. It was no use. 20. The police arrived just in time. They took all of us back to the police station. Old Wang refused to settle the matter. When I knelt before him at the police station entrance, begging once more, he spat a mouthful of bloody phlegm at me. I'm gonna make sure your old man gets locked up. The place is full of my boys. Your dad's a dead man walking. The autumn sun hung high in the sky, and I felt the blood in my veins run cold. Staring at his vicious sneer, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small knife. Well, in that case, why don't you go on ahead and scout it out? Zhan Yunshu, a familiar voice rang out, and a warm hand grasped my arm. The small knife clattered to the floor with a sharp clack. Old Wang saw it and scrambled into the police station in a blind panic. Help, someone's trying to kill me. Chen Yujin held onto my hand with a death grip. Zhan Yunshu, I'll handle this. Shinjingi had arrived too. She took a blanket and wrapped it around me. The car's heater was on, yet my hands and feet felt like blocks of ice. An hour later, Chen Yujin emerged from the police station in a wheelchair. My father followed close behind him. My tears began to fall instantly. 21. My dad got out of the police station, but old Wang ended up in prison. The people Chen Yujin hired dug up some of his past crimes. They were still within the statute of limitations, so they sent him straight in. All these years, my dad has been finding new homes for the dogs. When the last dog was placed, he sold off the scrapyard, with the money he had left. He opened a small convenience store in the city. the kind with a coin-operated rocking horse out front. On moving day, he finally let go of the past. Yunshu, it's okay if you don't get into school. Your old man can still provide for you. The weather this year has been strange. It had been a crisp, clear autumn, but then it rained for 2 solid weeks. The sports meet kicked off during those few dry days after the rain finally stopped. Our class monitor clasped her hands together, looking at me with pleading eyes, begging me to sign up for an event. I didn't have the heart to say no. Then, when the participant list came out, I realized I was the only girl signed up for all the running events. When class ended, Jin Eugene was asleep. He was slumped over the desk, his long lashes like feathers. Jin Eugene, I don't want to run this many races. I rested my head on the desk too, tracing the contours of his face in the air. Jin Eugene, I don't want to run this far all by myself. His breathing was steady, and he looked like he was asleep. Jin Eugene, is it too cruel of me to make you follow me on my run? I withdrew my hand in a huff. The next second, he seized my wrist. He opened his eyes and spoke softly. The sound came through the tabletop and into my ears, one after another, deafeningly loud. I heard him say, okay, I'll go with you. 22. It's over. I think I've fallen for Jin Eugene, that gloomy, difficult, and sharp-tongued guy. How could that possibly be my type? On the field of the sports meet, I was getting ready inside the track. The stand suddenly erupted with excitement. Is that Jin Eugene? Holy crap, he never comes to these kinds of events. Quick, take a picture, take a picture. A face like the young master's is a rare sight. Treasure every glance. It's a holiday. We Yuyun fans are celebrating today. I followed everyone's gaze to look. Jin Eugene appeared in the public eye. Seated in a wheelchair, my heart began to pound thunderously. It was a step he had been utterly unwilling to take, yet, he took it. For me, the 100-meter, 400-meter, 800-meter, and 1,500-meter races. He was there for every event. I was completely exhausted, yet, the sound of my heartbeat grew louder and clearer. I've really fallen for him. 23. After the sports meet, I deliberately cut back on chatting with him. I just couldn't look him in the eye. I'm afraid if I open my mouth, I like you will just come out. That would be so awkward. What if I misread this situation? What if this proud guy decides he doesn't even want to be friends anymore? Jin Eugene had noticed it too. He started making an effort to initiate conversations with me. For instance, while we were having lunch, he asked me, have you eaten yet? I was puzzled. When I noticed him staring at me, he said, the weather is really nice outside, but it's raining outside. Once, twice, and by the third time, I finally caught on. Are you upset because I'm not talking to you? His gaze softened instantly, all wet, like a little puppy. Do you want to talk with me? He nodded. Do you know what it means when you want to talk to a girl? Got it. My face flushed instantly. My heart was pounding in my throat. I lowered my head, not daring to look at him. Jin Eugene took the opportunity to hold my hand. Zhang Yunshu, I've been meaning to ask you something these past few days. Go ahead and ask. My voice was so soft and sweet it could practically drip honey. Have you ever considered applying through the sports recruitment program? 24. Damn it. Are you blind? Jin Eugene. So what if I blushed a little? Does that just mean I have a healthy circulation? I was so furious I was left speechless, completely breathless. So, is this what you've been trying to tell me these past few days? He gave a serious, thoughtful nod. I had a professional coach analyze your track meet results. Your physical condition is perfectly suitable for the sports recruitment path. It's not too late. If you're interested, I can arrange a training plan and a specialized mentor for you. Damn, at a time like this, and you're talking to me about my future prospects. I don't want a bright and promising future. I want a tumultuous, all-consuming love. I want that stormy, passionate love. I gave up on myself completely and curled up under the desk. Zhang Yunshu, are you feeling unwell? Jin Eugene looked down at me. I gritted my teeth and grabbed him by the collar. I forced his head under the desk, so close. I tilted my face up and kissed him, a fleeting touch, soft and brief like a dragonfly skimming water. I snapped back to reality. Jin Eugene pressed his fingers to his lips, staring at me in disbelief. I completely lost it and bolted out the door. 25. I lost count of how many laps I ran around the track. Jin Eugene followed right behind me in his little buggy. At the moment of utter exhaustion, I curled into myself and sank down like an ostrich. Tears mingled with sweat streamed down my face. Zhang Yunshu, can I have a word? My voice was muffled. No, I don't want to. I don't want to hear it. Can I just say one thing? No, I'm not listening to you about the sports recruitment program. It's not about the sports recruitment. I looked up, a complete mess with tears and sweat matting my hair. What is that? Jin Eugene let out a sigh. It's that I like you. My mind was exploding with fireworks. Just say whatever comes to mind. I liked you first. I realized I liked you first. Let me play with the bang bang car for a bit. I went on and on for ages. After holding it in for so many days, I was just bursting to talk. Just as my throat was getting parched from all the talking, he handed me a bottle of water. Starting tomorrow, I'll train with you. Damn, alright, fine. 26. The coach Chin Eugene hired is really effective. The training plan he put together was really effective. My dad never expected that the academic dream he had given up on for me was now on the verge of coming true. See, I told you so. The school always finds a way. My dad stood there, beaming with pride, hands on his hips as he looked at me. I don't have time for him. Afternoon training is about to start. I quickly shoveled a few bites of food. Chin Eugene is a really petty guy. If I'm late just once, I won't be able to kiss him for a whole week. I can't let him catch me again. Shinjingi would come to hang out with me after class too. Although she and Chin Eugene still don't get along whenever they meet, training can't be neglected. And there are requirements for academic classes as well. Just like that, half a year has flown by. I've gone from a dewy, fresh-faced little girl to a muscular, perpetually scowling little girl. The standardized exams were successfully completed. The Gaokao, too, arrived amidst an atmosphere of intense pressure. After the college entrance exams ended, I once again couldn't get in touch with Chin Eugene. Just like last time, I thought he must have gone back to the old family estate again. The next day, someone came to my family shop. Miss Jean Yunshu. Is that you? Our young master sent me to fetch you. 27. I narrowed my eyes. Young master, you mean Chin Eugene? The man who arrived appeared middle-aged, dressed in a suit, with a respectful expression. Nothing seemed out of place. Hold on a second, let me grab my bag. I just happened to buy a crossbody plush toy for his birthday gift. I followed the middle-aged man into a Bentley. The car had a pleasant citrus scent that made me drowsy, but I didn't fall asleep. I had a whole pack of Hall's Midnight Storm in my mouth. My mouth is so cold now. It feels like my words are freezing. The Bentley was parked inside an abandoned, unfinished building. A middle-aged man took my backpack. He and another man carried me upstairs. I lost count of the floors. Finally, they set me down in an empty space. My hands and feet were tied. I cracked my eyes open to survey my surroundings. I was in a high-rise, and the wind whistled through from all sides. A person was lying not far away, and my heart clenched in my chest. It was Chin Eugene. He looked like he'd been beaten, his hands and feet bound, his whole body slumped on the ground. Huatian emerged from around the corner, crouched down, and patted Chin Eugene's face. Wake up, Chin Eugene, look who I brought for you. Something was off about Chin Eugene's condition. It's freezing out, and all you're wearing is a thin white shirt. Huatian had to slap him several times before he finally came to. Wasn't it right here, 10 years ago, that your brother died? He died, and you were left crippled, isn't that right? Huatian grabbed him by the hair, forcing him to look at me. Then how about this? You and this damn bitch both die here today. Chin Eugene saw me clearly, his eyes wide with fury. Huatian, don't you dare lay a finger on her. Young Master Chen, I'm not afraid. My family was ruined by yours. There's no future for me in this country anyway. I dream of killing you both. And Shinjingi is next. Like a madman, he let go of Chin Eugene and lunged straight for me. He dragged my entire body, pulling me toward the unsealed window. Chin Eugene crawled forward, at one point trembling as he tried to stand up. Huatian, I'll give you anything you want. Let her go. Let her go. What do I want? I want her dead. I'll make her watch herself fall to her death. Huatian grabbed my hair, his hand raised to slap me awake. My eyes snapped open, and my hands, bound behind my back, broke free from the ropes. I drove my fist into his face. 28. The doll was actually a hidden pouch. Before heading out, I slipped a utility knife into my bag. While he was still dragging Chin Eugene around in his frenzy, I had already cut through the rope binding my wrists. I drove Huatian to the ground with a single punch. Quick as a flash, I sliced through the rope binding my feet. Grab her. The man in the suit and another man charged in. I drove my knife into Huatian's leg. A cry of pain instantly echoed through the entire building. I pulled the knife out, pressing it against his neck. I dragged him over to Chin Eugene's side. The three of you are family, right? Come any closer, and Huatian dies right here. The two of them froze, not daring to make a move. Please, let Xiaotian go. Don't hurt him. I released Huatian and stomped my foot down on his wound, with a hand now free. He immediately scooped Chin Eugene up from the ground and hoisted him onto his back. Chin Eugene, hold on tight. Then, he pressed the blade against Huatian's throat once more. Back off. Chin Eugene's body was burning up with fever. That brief standoff with Huatian had already drained the last of his strength. Stay awake, Chin Eugene. Don't fall asleep. He was carrying one person on his back and dragging another. I had to stay on guard against a potential ambush from the two of them at all times. My stamina was rapidly draining. When the sound of police sirens echoed in the distance, I immediately dropped Huitian, grabbed Chin Eugene, and bolted downstairs. I screamed hoarsely, "Dad, I'm over here, hurry up, faster." When we reached the 5th floor, my dad and the police came rushing up. My legs instantly gave way beneath me. Good thing I was prepared. As I left the house, I gave my dad a knowing look. I shared my live location with him the whole way. Just before the middle-aged man took my bag, I had already sent the text. "Call the police." 29. In the abandoned building, apart from Huitian, the other two people were his father and his older brother. The court imposed a severe penalty for the combined charges of kidnapping and attempted murder. Huitian had also turned 18, 2 death sentences with reprieves, and 1 life imprisonment. By the time the verdict was handed down, Chin Eugene and I had already started university. During those 2 weeks of recuperation in the hospital, Chin Eugene was able to stand up on his own. His mother took my hand, weeping uncontrollably. According to his mother, Chin Eugene's leg condition is largely psychological in nature. When he was 9, he and his younger brother were kidnapped. During the rescue, his brother was pushed off by the kidnappers while trying to protect him. He fell to the ground that day and was never able to stand again. That's just what my mom and the others think. In our 2nd year together, Chin Eugene held my hand as we walked along the beach. Apart from being a bit slower, he could walk perfectly well. The truth is, my younger brother, thinking he was being clever, pushed me toward the robbers, only to end up falling down himself. My younger brother was the most spoiled child in the family, raised by our parents from a young age. As for me, I grew up in the old family house under the strict care of my grandfather. After I was brought to live with my parents, we were so distant, it was as if we weren't even family. If he dies and I live, I'll lose everyone. But if he dies and I'm left disabled, I'll have everyone's guilt. I thought this was love. And that's why I could never stand up again. I stepped on his shadow in the sand. Now that your heart is unburdened, do you no longer need their love? Chin Eugene shook his head, took my hand, and gently kissed it. It's not that I don't need it anymore, it's just that it doesn't matter. Compared to real love, none of that matters. The end. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. See you in the next video.